What about thoughts on worm castings? Is that a safe to apply?
Absolutely. Worm castings are fabulous, but you can overdo it. It's far more difficult to overdo worm castings. But the worm castings, uh, their quality is dependent on what you're putting in as the food stuff for you. If you've got a worm farm, what are you feeding the worms? If you're feeding the worms the scraps from your veggie garden, that's going to be really good worm castings, provided the soil the veggies is growing in is in good shape. Because if there's a mineral deficiency in the soil, there'll be a mineral deficiency in the plant, and there'll be a mineral deficiency in the worm casting. It's the same mineral. The worms can't create it. If you want to improve the quality of your worm castings, if you don't want to go down the road of testing soils, etc., and you might just be a home gardener, for example, and you're running a worm farm and you're using, say, the leachate and the worm castings in your garden, when you feed the worms, put a bit of soil in with the worm feed, because the worms will break down that soil and release nutrients that are tied up in that soil, and they can help improve any deficiencies. So you can utilize your worms to improve that soil. And if you're not going down the road of testing and you're growing your own veggies, you should be able to assess through appearance and flavor the quality of what you're producing. The plants will tell you, and if you're tuned up, your taste will tell you. And sometimes we might, after a big rain event in summer, we might be growing lettuce in our veggie garden, and we'll make a salad, and I'll think, oh, this lettuce is starting to get a little bit bitter. That's because it's got a sulfur deficiency. Sulfur makes plants sweet. So the taste will tell me, hey, time to put on a bit of sulfur, because sulfur leaches from the soil. You get a big rain event, leaches out the available sulfur. The plants start to become a bit bitter. So you know straight away you got a sulfur deficiency. And another reason for plants getting bitter is they might have too much chloride. Where's your water coming from? Does it have a high amount of salt in it, in the water, like an elevated amount of salt, which is sodium, and chloride is heavier than sodium, even though salt is a 1-to-1 sodium chloride molecule. Chloride's heavier than sodium, so the chloride increases faster. Chloride makes plants bitter. So you've got to identify what's the problem.
Going back to one thing you talked about at the beginning, you did the compost tea, you applied it, didn't think it was much better than worm castings, the worm juice. What's your theory on why?
Oh, there wasn't any nutrition in it for the plants. See, compost tea is all about microbes, putting microbes out into your land. All of the microbes in compost already exist in soil. If they are in a low number in the soil, that's because the environment doesn't suit them. There's not enough food stuff there for those microbes, or they would be flourishing. If you put more microbes on that same soil, all they're going to do is die, because there's already not enough nutrition. So that's why there was absolutely zero impact on the compost tea. They didn't have any food. I put a bit of molasses in with it to give them a feed. I put them out with a cut lunch, if you like, but they soon consumed that. And then they perished because there was no food there. The same microbes are already in the soil. That's the microbes that are in compost. They come from the soil. That's the origin. And they feed up in compost and expand because there's all that nutrition you've created for them. So you take those microbes and then you go and put them out in an environment and there's no food for them. What are they going to do? They're going to starve to death. So,
probably not worth the time, in your opinion?
Definitely not worth the time. For me, on a pasture, yeah, the amount of money you spent on that, you may as well have gone taking your family out for lunch. You would have got something back for it. I'd say it's definitely not worth it. But if you put some nutrition for the microbes, and as I say to people, feed the microbes you already got in the soil. They're already there. Don't make compost and
let them expand naturally.
Let them expand naturally with nutrition.
Yeah,
because they're the first responders to nutrition. I'm not saying compost is not good on grassland. Compost is fabulous to put on grassland, but you probably need 10 tonnes a hectare. What's the economics of making 10 tonne per hectare? And your access to the ingredients to make that on farm, if you're importing materials to make compost, you may as well just go and buy fertilizer. It's far more productive. You'll get a much better return on investment than the high energy process of making compost and then applying it.